It is December 11th, 2008. Two FBI agents knocked on the door of a luxury Manhattan penthouse on the Upper East Side of New York City. The man they were there to arrest is no ordinary criminal. He's not some low-level con man running a scam from a back office. He's one of the most powerful, most respected, trusted, and most celebrated men in the entire history of American finance. The former chairman of Nasdaq Stock Exchange, the man whose name alone was enough to make billionaires beg to give him their money. His name is Madoff, and he just stole $65 billion from thousands of people across 127 countries. As shocking as this is, something else is far more disturbing. How did no one catch this man for over 20 years? This is the question you should be asking. This is not just a story about greed. If you think the story is just about greed, you have missed the point already. It's a story about power, reputation, and how one man weaponized the trust of an entire financial system. In this video, we are covering everything: who Madoff really was and how he built one of the most respected firms on Wall Street. We will break down exactly how the scheme worked in plain terms so you will understand clearly. We will look at how the people who were supposed to catch him kept looking the other way, even when one man spent 9 years trying to get someone to list him. We will go into the moment it all came crashing down, what happened to Madoff's wife, his sons, and his family, and the dark, devastating aftermath that almost nobody talks about. By the end of this video, you never looked at the finance world the same way again. You think I'm joking? Let's get it started.
Bernie Madoff has been arrested. He's the founder of Bernie Madoff Investment Securities.
Former iconic figure on Wall Street has allegedly, but by his own admission, destroyed many lives, charities, and reputations on Wall Street.
Madoff, 70 years old, arrested by the FBI.
A walk of shame and shove.
Madoff was born on April 29, 1938 in Brooklyn, New York. He grew up in Lowerton, a working-class neighborhood in Queens. His father, Ralph, was a plumber. His mother, Sylvia, was a homemaker who at a point tried to get into the finance world herself. She ran a small broker operation called Gibraltar Securities out of their family home. The SEC, which is Security Exchange Commission, eventually shut it down because the Madoffs failed to file the required regulatory report. Are you seeing what is happening here? So from the very beginning, finance and disregard for the rules were already part of the family culture. But here's the thing about Benny. Benny was a smart kid. He attended Far Rockaway High School where he met his future wife, a girl named Ruth Alpen. He worked summer as a lifeguard at a beach club on Long Island and installed sprinkler systems on the side to save money. He went to the University of Alabama for 1 year, then transferred to Hofstra University in New York where he earned a degree in political science. He briefly attended Brooklyn Law School but dropped out for reasons best known to him. He was never the most academically impressed person in the room, but Benny Madoff had something no degree could teach. He knew how to make people trust him, and from a very young age he understood that on Wall Street trust was worth more than talent, and that is the weapon he's going to be deploying. In 1960, Benny Madoff was 22 years old. He took $5,000, money he had saved from lifeguarding and sprinkler installation, borrowed another $50,000 from his father-in-law, Saul Alpen, and opened his own investment firm. He called it Madoff Investment Security. He was too small to trade on the New York Stock Exchange, the most prestigious exchange in the world at the time. He felt looked down on, but instead of giving up, he did something smart. He embraced technology before almost anyone else on Wall Street. Together with his brother Peter, Benny helped develop one of the very first computerized stock trading systems. This was groundbreaking at a time when Wall Street was still built on handshakes and paper records. The Madoff firm was using computer to quote stock prices and execute trades faster than anyone else. That technology, the system the Madoff brothers helped pioneer, eventually became the foundation of Nasdaq Stock Exchange. Let that sink in. Benny was not just clever, he was operating at a different level, far beyond most of his peers, and yet this same man would go on to run the largest financial fraud in history, all while the system he built powered global trading technology to this day. By the early 1990s, Benny Madoff was not just successful, he was respected at the highest level of American finance. He served as chairman of Nasdaq Stock Exchange 3 separate times in 1990, 1991, and 1993. He sat on the boards of financial regulatory bodies. He was on advisory committees. He was trusted by people whose job it was to keep the market honest. His firm became the 6th largest market maker in S&P 500 stocks. Now, if you are not familiar with S&P 500, think of it as a list of 500 biggest and most powerful companies in America. We are talking about companies like Apple, Google, and Microsoft. So when everyday people bought or sold shares in those kinds of companies, a huge chunk of those trades were being processed through Madoff's firm. Major players like Charles Schwab and Fidelity were all routing their customers' trade through his operation. You can see clearly he's a big guy. He was by every visible measure a titan of Wall Street, a genuine one for that matter. But something else was happening, something that almost nobody knew about, and this is where it's about to go crazy. Bernie Madoff's office was a sleek glass-fronted skyscraper at 885 3rd Avenue in Manhattan. New Yorkers nicknamed it the Lipstick Building because its carved red granite exterior looked like a lipstick bullet. The firm occupied 3 floors, the 18th, 19th, and 17th floor. Take note of this, we're going to come back to these floors. The 18th and 19th floors were the legitimate business, real traders, real technology, real market making, totally above board. That part of the firm was genuinely respected and genuinely profitable. The 17th floor was something else entirely. It was locked, separately secured, only certain people had access, and it was the floor the entire fraud lived. Here's how the scheme actually worked, and pay close attention because this is the part that most people only half understand. But I trust you are going to understand everything. Now here's how it works. Madoff's firm had a second business called the Investment Advisory Division. This was a secret side. Wealthy clients, charities, hedge funds, and institutions gave Madoff money to manage on their behalf. They were told he was using a highly sophisticated strategy called split strike conversion. Here's what that actually means in plain terms. You start by buying stocks in large, well-known companies. Then use 2 types of options contract to manage your risk. The first is called a put option. Think of it like buying insurance for your car. If something goes wrong and the value drops, you are covered. You're already locked in a price you can sell at, so you do not take a devastating loss. The second is called a call option. This one works like agreeing to sell your house at a fixed price no matter how high the market goes. You give up some of the upside, but in return, you earn steady income along the way. Put them together and the idea is simple. You are protecting yourself from big losses on one end while quietly earning on the other. This is not a fraud, it's a risk strategy, completely legitimate. Some professional investors do use version of it, but not this exact one Bernie Madoff is using. But here's the thing, even a perfect version of this strategy would never produce the numbers Madoff was claiming. Independent researchers later proved it mathematically. The strategy simply could not guarantee 10 to 12% annual returns with almost no losing months year after year across market crashes, recessions, and financial collapses. The math was impossible, and Bernie Madoff knew it because he was not using that strategy. He was not using any strategy at all. In fact, nothing is happening. He was not trading anything at all. Every single trade confirmation, every monthly statement, every account balance, all of it was fabricated, printed out of an ancient IBM computer from the 1980s, sitting on the 17th floor that was not even connected to the real trading system one floor up. The numbers were invented and then backdated to show trades that never happened. All of the money that clients sent to Madoff was deposited into a single bank account at Chase Manhattan Bank. That is it, nothing more. No investment, no stocks, no options, just one bank account. And when clients wanted their money, Madoff simply took out of that account and paid them from new investors' deposit. That is a Ponzi scheme, using the money from new investors to pay old ones. Classic Ponzi scheme. And it's actually one of the oldest, simplest frauds in history. Understanding how Bernie Madoff fooled so many intelligent people for so long requires understanding the psychology he built around himself. First, it was exclusivity. You could not simply walk into Bernie Madoff's office and hand him your money. He made sure that doesn't happen. He turned people away. You had to be referred by someone who already invested with him. You had to be vetted. You had to be approved. Being accepted as a Madoff client became a mark of social status. People bragged about it at dinner parties. People begged to get in. The very act of being turned away made people want access even more. Once you were in, the returns were consistent enough to be believable, but impressive enough to generate loyalty. Typical Ponzi schemes promise like 30 or 50% and collapse quickly because they attract too much attention. Madoff was smarter than that. He promised 10 to 12% annually. That is good, but not outrageous. Enough to keep people satisfied, enough to keep them from pulling their money out, enough to avoid the kind of scrutiny that eye-popping returns would attract. Second, he cultivated a Jewish community with particular precision. He became a fixture at the Palm Beach County Club in Florida, a private club with a largely Jewish membership. He became treasurer of Yeshiva University. He sat on philanthropic boards. He positioned himself as a trusted guardian of community money. Wealthy families, synagogues, charities, and foundations all funneled money to him because of the social trust he had built. People describe it simply: you don't doubt Bernie. You could doubt God, but you don't doubt Bernie. Can you imagine this outrageous statement? But sooner or later, these people will realize that crazy things are happening. Third, he guarded secrecy as a selling point. When sophisticated investors or hedge funds asked questions about how exactly his strategy worked, he would shut them down. He would say the method was proprietary, a trade secret. He could even threaten to return their money and close their account if they pushed too hard. And incredibly, that worked because nobody wants to be kicked out. Nobody wants to lose access to the code in return. Madoff's biggest weapon was not a computer program, a fake trade, or a forged document. It was human psychology. He understood that the most dangerous thing he could do was let people believe they were special. Once they believed that, they would protect the illusion themselves. Can you imagine that? Crazy things are happening. Madoff did not hunt for clients one by one. He built a network of what are called feeder funds. These were separate investment firms run by other people, and their entire function was to collect money from investors and pour it all into Madoff's operation. The most prominent of these was the Fairfield Greenwich Group, which ultimately channeled $7 billion into Madoff's firm. There was also Tremont Group, Ascot Partners, and dozens of others spread across the United States, Europe, and beyond. These feeders fund earned massive fees for bringing money to Madoff. The more money you brought, the more money you earned. And Madoff was said to be paying them well, over 80% of the fee income. That financial incentive created a culture of wasteful blindness. The people running these feeder funds had every reason not to ask too many questions, because every question they asked risked the relationship that was making them rich. There were also people inside Madoff's own operation who knew or suspected and said nothing. Frank DiPascali was the most important of them. Hired at the age of 18 in 1975 as a basic errand boy, DiPascali eventually became Madoff's chief deputy on the 17th floor. He was the one who oversaw the daily mechanism of the fraud. He supervised the team that backdated fictitious trades. He managed the account statements. He dealt with major clients on Madoff's behalf. He later admitted in court that he had known the operation was fraudulent since the late 1980s. He kept the secret for nearly 20 years. DiPascali brought in 2 computer programmers to help cover their tracks. FBI investigators later nicknamed them the Computer Boys. Their names were George Perez and Jerome O'Hara. Their job was simple: to build a system that could automatically generate fake trades record and account statements for thousands of clients at the same time. In other words, they built a machine that must produce lies. The devil needs to be scared of these guys. There was also Annette Bongiorno, a legitimate Madoff's assistant who created fake trading records by reading old editions of the Wall Street journals, picking the stocks that had performed best in prior months and simply backdating them into clients' accounts as if Madoff had predicted and bought them in advance. The entire 17th floor was, in essence, a sophisticated document forgery operation dressed up to look like a thriving investment business. This is unbelievable. In 1999, a financial analyst named Harry Markopoulos was working at a Boston-based investment firm. His boss returned from a New York meeting with marketing materials from a fund manager whose returns were extraordinary. The boss handed the documents to Markopoulos and asked him to reverse engineer the strategy so the firm could replicate it. Markopoulos sat down with the numbers. He said he knew within minutes that something was deeply wrong. No legitimate investment strategy produced the result Madoff was reporting. The returns were too smooth, too consistent. The market went up and the funds went up. The market went down and the funds barely moved. In real finance, Markopoulos later told Congress there is no such thing as 45-degree line rising straight upward across 17 years. That line exists in geometry class, not in financial markets. He concluded that there were only 2 possible explanations. 1, Madoff was illegally front-running client orders using advanced knowledge of the brokerage customers trade to profit his own account before executing them. 2, he was running a Ponzi scheme. After further analysis, Markopoulos was certain it was a Ponzi scheme. He took a step further. He submitted an 80-page document to the SEC's Boston office in May 2000. No response at all. He resubmitted in 2001. He ignored still. In 2005, he delivered a 19-page memo to SEC regulators titled plainly and bluntly, "The world's largest hedge fund is a fraud." The memo listed 29 specific red flags. 29. That's crazy. The SEC did not conduct a proper investigation. He was still ignored. Markopoulos submitted warnings again in 2007 and again in 2008. 8 years, 5 separate submissions mathematically proved that the numbers were impossible. But guess what? All of them were ignored. He later testified before Congress that he feared for his own physical safety. He believed that the scale of money involved meant that if Bernie Madoff found out someone was investigating him, violence was not impossible. He wrote his warnings anonymously to protect himself. He kept a file at home with instructions for his family in case something happened to him. Meanwhile, the SEC, which stands for the Security and Exchange Commission, which which is the government body responsible for making sure financial markets are fair and honest, were conducting their own investigation into Madoff's firm. But those investigations were lazy and lacking any real efforts. And here's the most frustrating part. Not once during any of those investigations did anyone do the one simple thing that will shut down the whole fraud operation immediately. They never picked up the phone to call the independent record keeper that tracks every single stock trade in the market just to check whether Bernie Madoff's trade had actually happened. One phone call. That is all it could have taken to expose the largest financial fraud in history. And guess what? Nobody did. While the fraud continued, Bernie Madoff lived life of a genuine Wall Street king. He owned a Manhattan penthouse on the Upper East Side, valued at several millions of dollars. He owned an oceanfront home in Montauk, New York. He owned an 18,700 square foot estate in Palm Beach, Florida. He owned a home in the south of France. He owned 3 yachts. His employees on the 17th floor were themselves living extravagantly, buying luxury cars, second homes, boats, all funded by investors' money flowing through the scheme. Bernie and his wife Ruth were fixtures on the New York social cycle. They attended galas and charity events. They donated to hospitals and cultural institutions. They gave to political campaigns. On the surface, they were the image of wealthy, generous, well-concerned New Yorkers. But behind closed doors, they were doing crazy stuff. Ruth Madoff first met Bernie when she was just 13 years old. They got married in 1959 when she was 18. In the early days of the firm, she was not just his wife, she was also his bookkeeper, the person who managed and tracked all the money coming in and going out. Employees in London office later recalled that during that time, Ruth ran all the books. In other words, she had her hands on financial records of the business from the very beginning. She later said she had no idea about the fraud. Prosecutors agreed and she was never charged. But we'll come back to her story, because her story after the collapse is one of the most quietly devastating parts of the entire saga. For nearly 2 decades, the scheme held together because new money was always coming in faster than old money was going out. The machine kept spinning. If you remember the example I gave earlier, it was using money from new investors to pay older ones. So as long as new money keep coming in, no issues at all. Things keep going fine. And then 2008 arrived. In the second half of 2008, the global financial system began to fall apart. Lehman Brothers, one of the biggest banks in the world, collapsed in September. Stock prices were dropping fast and nobody could stop it. Banks were either shutting down or being bailed out by government just to survive. People who had invested their money were scared. They did not know what was going to happen next, and they wanted their money back as quickly as possible. And this is the beginning of catastrophe. Madoff's clients felt the same way. They want their money back. By November 2008, requests to withdraw money were flooding in from all directions. In total, his clients were asking for roughly $7 billion. But here's the problem. At that point, Madoff had less than $300 million left in the account he used to run the entire scheme. He did not have the money, and now everyone was asking for it at the same time. He was finished and he knew it. In those final weeks, Bernie was desperate. He was scrambling to find new money from anywhere he could. He reached out to wealthy contacts and even sent pitch materials to a renowned Wall Street financier named Kenneth Langon, asking for somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion for what he described as a new investment opportunity. But here's the thing, Kenneth said no. A long-time investor and close friend handed him $250 million just days before his arrest, but it was not even close to enough. Then on December 5th, 2008, just 6 days before everything came crashing down, he accepted another $10 million from a different investor. He was taking money right up to the very end. This guy is crazy. On December 3rd, 2008, Madoff put Frank DePascali aside. He told him the words that ended everything. I am out of money. Crazy things are happening. On the evening of December 10th, 2008, Madoff held the firm's annual Christmas party. He was smiling. He handed out early bonus checks to employees. It was by all accounts a perfectly normal office holiday celebration. After the party, his sons, Mark and Andrew, who both worked in the legitimate trading division of the firm, confronted him. Don't forget, we have 3 floors here, 19th, 18th, and 17th. His sons were working in the 18th and 19th floor, but his shady business was all operated in the 17th floor. After the party, his sons, Mark and Andrew, who both worked in the legitimate trading division of the firm, confronted Bernie. They had noticed he wanted to hand out millions of dollars in early bonuses, and they demanded to know where the money was coming from. It was a reasonable question, and Bernie Madoff told them the truth. He asked them to come to the apartment. He sat them down. Ruth, his wife, was there, and Bernie told his family for the first time what he had been doing for decades. He said, I am running a Ponzi scheme. It's one big lie, and we are out of money. This was his exact statement. His sons sat in silence. Then they left. They cut off all ties immediately, went directly to their lawyer, and that lawyer called the FBI that same night. Mark and Andrew did not give their father that 1 week he had quietly asked them for. Bernie had told them that he needed that time to tie up some loose ends, but FBI investigators later confirmed what he actually meant. He was planning to destroy evidences. 50 boxes of documents had already been moved to a warehouse in Queens to be shredded and wiped from existence. When FBI agents arrived at the 17th floor of his office building, the shredding machines were still running. The next morning, December 11, 2008, two FBI agents arrived at Bernie Madoff's penthouse. They knocked on the door. He opened it. They asked him if there was an innocent explanation for the accusations his sons had made. He said no, there is no innocent explanation. Madoff reportedly told agents, "I paid investors with money that was not theirs." He was arrested on the spot. He was 69 years old then, and this is the beginning of another tragedy. On March 12, 2009, Bernie Madoff stood in a federal courtroom in New York and pleaded guilty to 11 felony counts: security fraud, investment advisor fraud, mail fraud, wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, false statement, perjury, false filings with the SEC, theft from an employee benefit plan. On June 29, 2009, federal judge Denny Chin sentenced him to 150 years in prison, the maximum possible sentence. Judge Chin described his crime as, in his own words, extraordinarily evil. The full scale of the victims was staggering. Elie Wiesel, the Nobel Peace Prize-winning Holocaust survivor and author, lost his entire personal savings, and his charitable foundation lost $15 million. Yeshiva University lost $110 million. Hadassah, the woman's Zionist organization, lost $19 million. Billionaire Mark Zuckerman lost $30 million from his charitable trust. Financier Ira Reinhardt lost at least $100 million. Steven Spielberg's charitable foundation was hit. Helvin Bacon and Kara Sedgwick lost their savings. Foundations and charities across the countries that had entrusted their entire endowments to Madoff simply ceased to exist overnight. Schools closed, scholarship programs ended, teen outreach programs shut down, entire communities were destroyed. Nearly 41,000 victims across 127 countries lost money. The actual cash invested and lost, the real money that went in and never came back, was approximately $17.5 billion. The fake paper value of all fabricated accounts was $64 to $65 billion. By December 2024, the court had assigned a man named Ivan Picard to hunt down the stolen money and return it to victims. He managed to recover and distribute approximately $4.3 billion. That sounds like a lot, but it only covered a portion of what people actually lost. Tens of thousands of victims never got back everything they put in. Many got back nothing at all. They have trusted Bernie Madoff with their life savings, their retirement funds, and their future, and it was all gone. But for his family, the fraud did not just destroy the investors, it destroyed the Madoff family itself. Ruth Madoff had been married to Bernie. She was never charged with any crime, but the government forced her to surrender almost everything. From the $17 million in assets that had been in her name, she was allowed to keep just $2.5 million to live on. No Manhattan penthouse, no luxury lifestyle. She was moved out of New York entirely, spending time in Boca Raton, Florida with her sister before eventually settling in Old Greenwich, Connecticut, driving a Toyota Prius and living in a small apartment. She visited Bernie in prison in the early years, but what happened with her son, Mark, ultimately broke the connection. Mark Madoff, Bernie's oldest son, was 46 years old when his father was arrested. The day after the arrest, he gave an interview and appeared to be cooperating fully with investigators, but privately, he was falling apart. The scandal destroyed his reputation, his career, and his marriage. He made an entire attempt on his life in October 2009 and was hospitalized. From his hospital bed, he sent his mother an ultimatum: stop visiting Bernie in prison or lose contact with me. Ruth chose not to comply. She kept visiting her husband. On December 11, 2010, exactly 2 years to the day after his father's arrest, Mark Madoff was found dead in his apartment in Soho, New York. His 2-year-old son was asleep in the next room. Mark had taken his own life by hanging. He was 46 years old. When Ruth learned of Mark's death, she later said, "I will regret to my dying day that I didn't do what he asked. It's too late. What a fool I was." She stopped visiting Bernie after Mark's death. Andrew Madoff, the younger son, was also never changed. He had previously been diagnosed with leukemia and gone into remission. After the scandal, the cancer returned. Andrew told people he blamed the stress of his father's crime for bringing the disease back. He died of leukemia on September 3, 2014 at the age of 48. Both of Bernie Madoff's sons were dead within 6 years of his arrest. Both had been under ongoing criminal investigation at the time of their death. All 6 of Madoff's grandchildren have since changed their last name. Peter Madoff's Bernie brother, who served as the firm's chief compliance officer, pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. They are taking 50 $2.7 million through the schemes and put his wife on a payroll in a no-show job. Frank DePascali, Madoff's chief deputy on the 17th floor, pleaded guilty to 10 criminal charges and cooperated extensively with federal investigators. He died of lung cancer in 2015 before he could be sentenced. You can see clearly crazy things happening everywhere. Bernie Madoff was sent to Butner Federal Correction Complex in North Carolina to serve his sentence. He was 69 years old when he arrived. While in prison, Bernie had some access to the media and occasionally gave written interviews. At different points, he expressed what some people describe as partial remorse, meaning he seemed sorry but only to a degree. In one interview, he described himself as a people pleaser who never actually wanted to hurt anyone. His victims did not buy that at all for a single second, and neither did the judge. Judge Chin later said that Bernie never showed any real remorse. What he was actually grieving, the judge said, of his own life. In 2013, Madoff suffered a heart attack. By 2014, he was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney disease. Bernie Madoff died in the prison's medical facility on April 14, 2021. He was 82 years old. He had served approximately 12 years of his 150-year sentence. Of course, he was destined to die there, but it came too early. So at this point, Bernie is dead, his 2 sons are also dead, and all his grandchildren has changed their names, disassociating themselves from him. So how did nobody catch him for over 20 years? Bernie Madoff understood something most people never learn. Power is not just about money. It's about the stories other people tell about you. He built a story so carefully over so many decades that when the truth finally surfaced, people genuinely could not believe it. Even the people who were supposed to protect investors, the regulators, the auditors, the compliance officers could not bring themselves to believe that a man of his stature could be running the simplest con in finance. Harry Marco Polo's handed the evidence to SEC 5 times. They ignored him 5 times because a man who is chairman of Nasdaq, on the board of universities, a benefactor of charities and hospitals, simply cannot be a criminal. That is the psychology that Bernie Madoff built and exploited every single day for 20 years. He did not hide in the shadows, he hid in plain sight. Bernie Madoff's story is the most extreme version of warning that applies to every single one of us. Reputation is not proof, exclusivity is not safety, steady returns are not a guarantee of anything in finance, and the most dangerous fraud is always the one that comes dressed in suit and a handshake. If this video gave you something, leave me a comment with one detail that stunned you the most. And here's the thing, I reply to every comment. Also, don't forget to subscribe because there's a lot more coming. Until I come away again next time, I remain Joshua Bejon. Bye for now.